Good afternoon, everyone. It's Dr. Gershon. I'm here with another Better Health webinar and podcast. I am absolutely thrilled to be live as part of our iconic series from an iconic venue in New York, Gurney's Inn. Here out in Montauk, I'm overlooking the incredible ocean. I am here today with a cohort of companies that are really game changers in their own right. And I am absolutely thrilled to be here to talk with a real leader, Geof Hannigan, who is the principal scientist at Merck Research Labs. He's the executive director at the Merck Digital Sciences Studio. And really, Geof is at the tip of the spear of change, which is really a lot about what we stand for at Endeavor and want to spotlight in our Better Health series. So, first, before going into a bit about Geof's impressive background and the incredible companies that he is moving forward in MDSS, I really want to take this opportunity just to thank everybody who's just been incredible in terms of supporting our platform. We now have 1.2 million views and growing. New incredible collaborations with fantastic organizations that are supporting this growth, and amazing founders who are looking for ways to network and partner and collaborate. Within this framework, it's important to understand that we have a strong interest in supporting several different types of founders. We're strong advocates for women CEOs and founders, strong advocates for founders of color, and we particularly are looking, as we are today, in the digital health space. Although Endeavor and its venture studio are very opportunistic in our investments, we're focusing in two-thirds of our investments into the digital health space because the platform is just ready to solve so many problems that industry has. And ultimately, this means better patient care. So, with that framework, I really want to introduce Geof. I'd like him to tell you his story, which is quite incredible, and the transition from being a principal scientist to now an executive director, bringing those skill sets together, identifying what's important in new CEO founders, and the leadership skills that he sees. So, Geof, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Thanks to yourself as well as Endeavor and Better Health. This is fantastic. Really excited to be here. So yeah, this was a great intro. A bit about myself. So I'm at Merck. Have been with Merck for about 6.5 years or so. Before that, originally got my bachelor's degree over at the University of Minnesota up in Duluth in cell molecular biology. Really trained as a bench scientist originally. That was a lot of fun, and then after getting my bachelor's, went on to do a PhD. Do more science and research and all that. So did that over in Philadelphia at UPenn. Again, coming in as a bit of a bench scientist, but at that time I really was keen to transition to be more of a computational biologist. So I did go through that at the time. I have always been really passionate about the translation aspect of my research and thinking about how it impacts patients. And so I did do a translational research certificate through the Howard Hughes while I was there as well. Lost my audio there for a second. So yeah, did all that, and then after earning my PhD, working in Elizabeth Grice's lab, we did a lot in microbiome and immunology, and especially looking at the virus component of the microbiome. From there, went over to Ann Arbor, to University of Michigan, to continue doing research uh, in infectious disease and oncology, specifically C. diff infections, and colorectal cancer research. Again, trying to mix that microbiology with the immunology. Um, Also did was a really great experience. Um, after doing that, I went over to Cambridge, to at the time the new Merck Innovation Center, which they called the Exploratory Science Center at the time. And yeah, came into the computational biology team. Worked with great folks. We really got a lot set up. We did a lot on the discovery analytics side of computational biology there, and systems biology. We got a patent, a few publications. In discovery, we also pivoted some of that technology to more manufacturing and commercial applications, which was really great. So really getting a more broad value stream out of what we're doing. Um, Also, given my startup experiences before joining Merck, I couldn't help but hang out with my business development colleagues, and we did together do a deal with a startup for a couple $1 million for essentially data acquisition and analytics and that sort of thing, and that experience, on the business side as well as this experience on the science side, really had me thinking about, okay, we see a lot in the startup space, but we could do more in the early stage startup space, and so that really, led to this idea of a startup accelerator program. Worked with a lot of great folks, on the Merck side, as well as different collaborators, and ultimately that solidified or manifested as the Merck Digital Sciences Studio, which we launched not this most recent summer, but the summer before. And yeah, we've been really excited about that. We're about to launch and announce our second cohort probably in the next week or so. So these days, I still, as you said, serve as executive director for the Merck Digital Sciences Studio, and then that kind of rolls into a broader remit, which these days, as of fairly recently, so even less on the principal science role now. Now that leads into this role I do, which is director of technology partnerships. So it's very strategic, very synergistic with the studio, and allows me to work a lot on strategic and partnership activity, both externally facing, but also very internal as well, which is exciting. So that
Great
gets us about up
overview.
to speed.
No, great overview. I mean, your background is so deep, and
Oh,
now this
thanks. It's been fun.
transition,
Yeah.
now this transition is so exciting. You have incredible partners in Merck,
Yeah.
in North Pond, in Microsoft, in McKesson. I mean, these are powerhouses,
Yeah.
in healthcare, in IT, in the digital, space. What I would like to talk about are two things. One is, what do you see that's exciting in the new entrepreneur founders,
Yeah.
particularly in this, AI digital age? There are new
Yeah.
skill sets, there are new demands, and of the CEO founders. And then second, what do you see on the industry side in
Yeah.
terms of reaching out, wanting to work with these companies, opening up doors for collaboration and partnering on deals and projects?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'd like to frame it from both sides of the table, because
Yeah.
I think that as money is now normalizing and becoming historically more expensive, but also historically, um, what's more and more important is the relationships that you
Yeah.
build between industry and founders. So
Yeah,
I'll leave that frame, and perhaps you can give me your perspective on.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think on the startup side, what I find really exciting is I think the field, especially as it relates to the digital side of things, digital enablement and AI, ML, these types of things. It's been around for a decent amount of time now, but I think putting all the new hype aside, I think that uh, it seems like we're getting we kind of being the field a bit more of a handle on where the value is and how to leverage it in really smart ways. I think there's been more and more focus on uh, data over, you know, algorithms, which I think has been a shift we've seen over the last couple of years, which has been exciting. So I think the field on the especially on the startup side has moved from very much, you know, in its infancy. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Where is the value going to be? It's really getting to the point where you can start to, point to companies that have really great, either digital foundations or digital offerings, and are really starting to figure it out. Maybe some early success stories, that sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot to be excited about, and I think we're actually starting to see uh, some of the readouts from that kind of startup, very early stage innovative side. Yeah, I think on the bigger company side as well. I think that companies are increasingly more comfortable with uh, you know these different partnership opportunities, and maybe starting to, similarly as the field matures, understand where the value might be or where the fit might be. I always love to talk to folks about the evolution of say cloud computing, right, which kind of came on the scene it was a little over 10 years ago or so, where really there weren't a whole lot of big or big-ish companies using cloud services. It was still a lot of on-prem, and I think that that as an example of the type of ramp up where I think a lot of groups were not comfortable using that, and we kind of saw that skepticism in the industry at large. But over time, that started to evolve, and then as that becomes a very key resource that these companies are becoming more comfortable using and working with, that starts to open up other doors for other types of more innovative opportunities. So that's kind of some of the ways that I've been seeing and thinking about it on
Great.
both sides.
No, that's terrific. That I really appreciate that high level overview, and I want to dial down, get a little more granular. So there
Yeah,
are a number of fantastic companies out of the first cohort. You
yeah,
and I have spoken about several of them,
yeah,
and Endeavor is involved in a few of them
yeah,
currently in a number of different ways.
yeah,
What I want to talk about is the expectations that founders have.
yeah,
Um, it, you know, in the past 20 years, um, it's been about disruptive technology,
yeah,
walking in the door, coming out with a check, and just
yeah.
because you are quote unquote disruptive,
Right. Yeah,
and
yeah,
now you touched upon a key word, data.
yeah,
So there wasn't a lot of data for many years.
yeah,
There was a low cost of money,
yeah,
and so the concept, and the confidence in the team, from the story was good enough to sell things. And now
yeah,
we're in a situation where everyone realizes the incredible power of AI, machine learning, deep learning,
yeah,
but there is a paucity of data.
yeah,
And so the differentiator between companies coming to the table to work with young founder entrepreneurs and
Yeah.
investors coming to the table to write checks for founders
Yeah.
rests upon first data, which comes from my perspective from doing lots of small projects and gathering that data. And second, a trust building process. You talked
Yeah.
about trust. So I'd like to talk about those two aspects as key components of, this broad term of like, what does networking mean? What does partnering mean? What does collaboration
Yeah.
mean? It
Yeah.
For me, it means the output of you build trust, you build confidence, you build the notion and concept in industry and investors that you as a CEO founder are a leader.
Yeah.
You know how to build teams that are effective, that
Yeah.
those effective teams can do what they say they're going to do, and you collect data to support your thesis.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I really liked I'm blanking on who it was at BioIT this year that said it. But to that point I made around kind of the maturing of the field. Not that I'd say it's a fully mature field, but it's getting there. They mentioned that we're seeing a shift from adjacency to discernment, and I kind of liked that phrasing. As you said, I think in the past that companies could get away with adjacency more, to say, especially in the machine learning and the AI in these spaces, it was sometimes enough to just say, uh, stand next to it and say, hey, look, we're using it, right? And never really saying what for or what the value or key milestones are going to be, but just we're using AI ML. And then that was enough. I think we've seen a lot less of that. And I think that we are seeing more of a requirement of discernment, right? Okay, you're using it, that's great, but how, where are you deriving value, how are you measuring that value? So I think, to your point around what are we seeing of companies and founders, in my experience, I think a lot of companies are coming out that are more, disciplined in the space and a little more thoughtful and a little more uh, yeah, just focused in on what exactly is going to happen and not trying to capitalize as much on the hype. Partially probably because it just doesn't work as much as it used to. Um, so yeah, I think that is kind of how I think about that. Sorry, I forgot what was the second part of your question.
Yeah, the question really is about what would be really the new normal. So the
Yeah.
new normal really is about gathering data,
Yes. Oh
proving that your
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
teams are effective,
Yeah. Yeah.
proving that you are a leader
Yeah.
and you can deliver what you say. And that trust building quality,
Yes. Yeah.
is very important because one of the things that I constantly hear from industry is, look, Dr. Gershon, we want to work with all of the companies that are doing these amazing things.
Right.
But we see, a common barrier for us.
Yeah.
The first barrier is that the founders are not bringing to the table a really detailed, researched understanding of what does it take to integrate their innovation into our giant business.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
that real world practical ability to embed
Yeah.
is circumscribed by a time frame that is very different in the minds of founders than it is in the
Yes.
minds of industry. And the
Yeah.
second is that founders don't understand yet that there are resources that are required for this. There's financial, there's human capital,
Yeah.
there's political resources, there is a period of time. And so for me, what we try to do is to coach and advise the founders to do deep dive research and understand what industry wants. So that's
Yeah.
kind of a question, since you are working with Microsoft, McKesson,
Yeah.
Merck, these are major industry leaders,
Yeah.
because ultimately, even if you're selling to the consumer, you need industry as an intermediary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you need most importantly, to understand that collaboration and partnership means that you are there to solve a problem that they have.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
would love for you to speak a little bit because you're so on the inside for many years,
Yeah.
in large biopharma.
Yeah.
Talk about first, the process for decision making, and second, the roadmap to allow companies and founders
Yeah.
into, this discussion negotiation room.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So, this is something that I talk to our founders about as well, as we brainstorm through these different approaches, because it can vary between who you're talking to. But at the end of the day, some of the approaches that I think are useful, especially when you're thinking about how are decisions made or what are the timelines. Uh, the the first thing that I like to mention is that there's different types of buyers, right? Essentially, or partners, or whatever, right? So as you come into any large company, right, and start having conversations, it's important to understand and go through the exercise in your mind of, there are champions, oftentimes in my experience that can be the scientists, right, where they see a poster at a conference or something that they get really excited about, and that's awesome and really important. But and speaking as someone who has been a scientist for many years, right, like I never had any budget power, right? I mean, like I could say, yes, this would be really valuable in my expert opinion, and I think this is something that could fit into this or that program or project. But at the end of the day, it's not me that's making that call. So it's important to understand, okay, there's that champion, but there's also people who are, actually the financial deciders, right? And you need to make sure that you're considering your approach with all these different players, and listeners to this can look into that a bit as far as like sales theory goes and stuff like that. But something else that builds on that is, as you're sitting in a meeting with maybe a potential large partner, customer, whatever, um, it's okay, at least I think it's okay to ask, hey, can you tell me a bit about what your decision making process looks like, right? Because it can be
Absolutely.
even different between, like, just between departments within a company, it can be different, let alone other companies. So I think that's fair, right? Walk me through, or what's your sense of the time cycle for how long these things usually take? And if the person you're talking to doesn't know those answers, then that's also good information, because that means you probably are going to need to start looping in someone else into these conversations, usually maybe more on the business development side, or that sort of thing. So yeah, these are some of the ways you can think about it, but it really, boils down to, I think, just when you're in the room, look around the room and try to get a sense of who you're talking to and whether you're talking to everyone that you need to. And then, asking questions and just trying to understand, because it will be different. Every department, company, whatever, can be nuanced and different. So
Yeah, that actually goes to the other issue of like the power and value of networking.
yeah,
You know, we both participated in the Boston LSX conference, which was a lot of
yeah, yeah,
fun.
yeah,
Just tremendous networking. And I just want to add a fine point on what does that mean?
yeah,
It means, I think, having a certain skill set as a founder,
yeah,
really practicing what is your message, what is your brand.
yeah,
You have to walk into the room, and within a minute or two, you have to captivate. And
right,
I'll just tell you a concrete example. So in LSX, I was moderating a panel. One of the panelists was a very, very senior person from Eli Lilly,
yeah,
been there for 30 years.
yeah.
I invited one of the companies that I work with, actually out from Minnesota, who
Oh,
is
great.
a spinoff of Boston Scientific,
Oh, yeah,
doing amazing things with biomarkers,
yeah,
and has a device that's the size of an iPhone, that essentially you breathe into it, and within 1 minute will tell you if you have
Oh yeah.
a certain
Yeah.
type of lung cancer. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, the CEO of the company walked into the room just after the panel discussion. I introduced him to the fellow from Lilly. Within 2 weeks, they have a meeting, and that
Great.
is following on with more meetings. Now,
Yeah.
to your point, he is not the decision maker, but he knows who the decision makers are.
Right. Right.
And so that's the networking part. So, first,
Yeah.
finding people like yourself or like myself who are connectors, who've been in industry for a long period of time.
Yeah.
I didn't just happen to introduce these two people. I
Yeah.
knew that there was going to be a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that
Absolutely.
rifle shot approach then leads to the
Yeah.
hard work, then leads
Yeah.
to like you have to really dig down and continue to follow through. And
Yeah.
so I would
Yeah.
love for you to talk about what you see in terms of the persistence, the
Yeah.
resilience of your CEOs, because
Yeah.
I've met a number of them. They're all extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an amazing group. Yeah. 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 I think networking is critical, right? To most things probably, but yeah, I think it's really important. It's really important to just get out there and be active in the community. Um, you know, I think it can be sometimes intimidating or daunting to go out because maybe your message isn't where you want it to be or whatever. But even just being there, right? Like I tell folks, whether they're an ARCO or whoever I'm talking to, it's just getting to, one of the local Boston venture cafes, they usually have those, fairly frequently, and so just going, right? Maybe you only talk to one person, but at least you get there, and then if you keep, like you said, persisting and getting better at it, your message becomes clear. You start to understand what points are resonating with folks, what points you probably don't have to, even really talk about because no one seems interested in that. Maybe there's other things you can lead with that are more interesting. So I think, yeah, that's really valuable. And then, yeah, like you said, that does tie into networks around, when you talk to partnerships and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely really really valuable.
I'd like to talk a little bit about um, what the expectations are from the industry side.
Yeah.
So what I hear from industry consistently is they meet with dozens, if not hundreds, of companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And their expectation is they want to work with a CEO founder and a team that understands that in order for there to be a successful collaboration, their innovation has to integrate
Yeah.
into a giant business.
Yes. Yeah.
And this understanding means understanding human resources, capital resources, political barriers
Yeah.
and resources. I'd love,
Yeah.
because you've been in industry for so long, give me a sense of where you see, you know, the potential channels
Yeah.
to be able to bring companies in, what the expectation should be of
Yeah.
founders, and then maybe a little bit of like a look into the future with what I see as what you're doing at MDSS
Yeah.
really is the future,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it really speaks to long-term relationship building. It's not a short-term gig. It's a long-term community building process.
Yeah.
And I think if you look out, beyond what you're doing, if you look at Sanofi with Future for Care,
Yeah.
they're doing amazing things in collaborating with Capgemini, Generali, and Orange in making $1.2 billion of investments
Yeah.
in digital health in the past couple of years. So there's a movement that I think speaks to changes within industry.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to talk about what you see in terms of what are the expectations that industry has of emerging companies, particularly
Yeah.
digital health companies.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there. First, in my experience, and this probably applies to even companies beyond the digital health space. When I have talked to companies in an introductory way, I usually ask for two things to get started. I ask for what's the value proposition, something really succinct and short that tells me the value that's being provided. And usually, what I'm looking for there is some sort of focused value proposition, and not we do everything, because that can be sometimes a challenge. The other thing is I ask for just a brief orientation in the competitive landscape, right? So who are your competitors, and why are you the one that I should go with, right? And just something where I can, in my mind, say, okay, this is the space of the industry we're playing in. Here's some companies I'm already really familiar with. Here's yours, but yours is similar but different and compelling enough that there'd be a need to do something. Um, so I think those can be really valuable. I always think having a just a non-confidential deck can be really valuable as well to send along. It's never good. I always tell founders, anyone I'm talking to, right, whether it's our cohort or whatever, if someone asks you for a non-con deck, before you send it, make sure it doesn't actually say confidential in it, because that is a problem, right? So it happens, and it's not ever a good situation. So when the request is for non-confidential information, make sure that's what's being sent, and don't try to like slip in language or be either missing things, or maybe just trying to put things in. So yeah, those are some thoughts. I'd say on the actual digital adoption side, I do think it's gotten, uh, as I said, a lot better. I think things have matured over time. Yeah, especially when you're a small company looking to work with a big company, they've all got their own things to work through. A lot of times folks on the big company side are really thinking about things like security, cybersecurity and that sort of stuff, because they're usually dealing with very large systems, or they're dealing with depending on what the area is. Maybe there's also some sort of like regulatory compliance that also needs to be ensured and checked and stuff like that. So as founders can just get their heads around, through meetings with folks and just talking. Usually you can figure it out by doing your research and talking to folks and that sort of stuff. Just understanding, okay, um, here are the types of like compliance certifications that we would need, or these are the types of security questions we might be asked. And then also going into it, understanding that it's probably going to be a little bit of a process. If you get some traction with any big company partner or mid-sized company partner, just expect like you're probably going to have to go through a bit of a learning curve with that group to understand what their needs are. I've seen that in many circumstances where just different security requirements, different things, and usually it's on you as the founder to comply with those needs. And so just understanding that it's probably not going to be some sort of just plug and play solution, that there's going to be some sort
Absolutely.
of back and forth there, and just allocating that kind of time, because it can be stressful if you don't have that time allocated, and then you find yourself under a time crunch that you weren't expecting. So just making sure you give yourself some leeway as far as getting into that.
Yeah, and I mean, all of this is just, I think, so valuable for founders, but
Yeah,
also a message to industry that we, as two individuals who run our own venture studios, we want to help our founders understand
yeah,
what your pain points are, how can
yeah,
we help you, and we both train and coach to make sure that our founders can adapt,
yeah, yeah,
they can pivot,
yeah.
they can be resilient, they can use their technologies in lots of different ways, because that accretive value is what industry is looking for.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, and that kind of gets to the networking side too, because there is just so much you know public information out there, right? I always think about going to like scientific conferences can be great because
Yep.
there's always folks from large companies out there giving talks or posters or whatever that anyone can go see as long as you're there.
Yep.
And it's not like it's a secret. I mean, you can go and you can see that what what's happening in the field and at different companies, and you can get a sense. Of course, there's a lot that you're not seeing, but you can at least start to get a sense of maybe where the values are, or where groups or the industry is going.
Absolutely. And then just a couple more questions because we are running out of time. But
Yeah,
from an Endeavor perspective, we actually like to work with large strategics on a project by project deal level
yeah,
to build data, to build confidence. But we actually like to exit, if we can't exit through the public markets, which we've done many times, we like to actually exit by bringing our young companies to what we consider the intermediary unicorns. So the
oh
$1 to $5 billion unicorns who are looking for hypergrowth, who may actually be faster in decision making,
yeah,
more, less encumbered by committees and other factors that large Fortune 500 companies might face. But those companies that are the hypergrowth $1 to $5 billion unicorns are the companies that large biopharma and health tech companies are absolutely going to be partnering with. So,
yeah,
one of the exciting things that I would focus attention to, and I'd love your opinion on this, is that founders actually have a new exit strategy. They have an
right,
exit strategy which is not just an all in or all out, but they can actually begin to partner with these intermediary $1 to $5 billion unicorns, embed themselves, and grow within that company.
yeah,
So this is a
yeah,
whole new mindset as opposed to like either a licensing deal or a straight
right,
sale or an exit or an IPO. Love to
yeah,
love to hear your thoughts on that as
yeah.
career path for some of these founders.
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying that this early stage company, um, you know, just gets a lot of traction by being a close partner with a larger company, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
for example, in silico medicine is a fantastic AI-driven company that's reshaping
right.
drug development and drug discovery. They
Yeah,
need companies like Pepper Bio, which comes out of
right.
MDSS and
Yeah,
who Endeavor has a relationship with.
yeah.
They need to be able to embed some of that technology to keep that hyper growth
Oh,
going.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so one of the exciting things is that young CEOs, like John and Samantha from Pepper Bio, they can find a longer term career actually, within an emerging unicorn like in silico,
right.
and that extends out their career possibilities.
Oh,
Also,
sure. Yeah,
also extends out, frankly, the payoff for them because they can get paid in many different ways, including stock options, from these emerging unicorns.
right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, as you said, we do see that sort of thing happening across the field, and yeah, it's always interesting to watch the industry grow, right, and evolve, and kind of see how these new engagements materialize. So,
Yeah, and I think
yeah.
for me the point is, I want to get as much exciting technology into the hands of patients as possible.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
so the quicker moving companies are the in silico medicines.
Right.
The longer term play are the large, top 10 biopharma companies.
Right.
I think it's super exciting for a young founder to be able to get to know Alex Zhirankov, CEO of
Yeah.
Insilico Medicine, alongside the CEOs and, chief medical officers of major biopharma
Oh,
companies.
yeah.
What I see from MDSS companies and from Endeavor companies is mission driven founders.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, mission driven to me means really having an impact
Yeah.
and being able to work with hyper growth, fast decision making companies who have the ear of larger companies means that you can bring your product to market faster and you have a longer tail on that. You have a sustainable pathway.
Right, right. Yeah,
So I'm super excited about the future. And my last question
yeah.
is in a brief period of time, where do you see MDSS in 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something that, I think a lot about, that the team, thinks a lot about. Yeah, at the end of the day, what, I think, the folks on the team, as you said, from a mission driven perspective, um, have always looked at the studios, first and more foremost being helpful, right? Thinking about, where can we be helpful? When we look at startups, right, we think about how can we help. So yeah, long term, I would love to see, uh, without, I don't know any specifics or anything, but in 5 years, my hope would be that, the program's still continuing to be helpful, still continuing to provide value to these really awesome startups that we're, fortunate to work with.
Well, I personally thrilled to work with the first cohort. There's just so
Yeah,
many great companies. And
they're
second,
wonderful. Yeah,
I am dying to see the magic that you're going to
yeah,
unfold in the second cohort.
yeah. I'm dying to get the release and everything out. Yeah, we're getting close here to the official, launch and all that. So it's very, very exciting times.
Well, Geof, I just want to thank you so much for this incredibly dynamic conversation. It is
Yeah,
both, I think, a high level understanding as well as some practical tips, for founder entrepreneurs. And I want to thank everyone who attended today. Really couldn't do this without all of your support.
yeah. And likewise, thank you. Thanks for the invitation to join you today. This was awesome. I love the conversation. This was great, and thanks to everything that Endeavor's doing and Better Health is doing. I think this is just a really, really great resource, really great community. This is wonderful.
Well, thank you, Geof. Hang on for a second. I'm going to
Yeah,
sign off. Everyone, I hope you have a great rest of the afternoon. I
yeah.
personally am going to be taking a walk on the beach out
I'm
here at
jealous. Yeah, that's
Danny's.
great.
We've actually got 12 amazing companies out here that we're introducing to some investors.
Great.
And so it couldn't be a more beautiful setting to talk about business and the impact that these companies are going to have on patients and healthcare. So,
Yeah,
Geof, hang on a second. Everyone else, have a wonderful afternoon. I'll send you pictures of the beach walk.
perfect.